Hey everybody, it's Tommy Canale again, and welcome to Before the Lights podcast. This show to find out how those in sports, music, and entertainment made their mark. Please go to our website, beforethelightspod.com, and follow us on Instagram at beforethelightspod. You got a couple minutes? Head over to Apple Podcast, rate and review the show, please. But right now, it's time to get this one started. Go get yourself a coffee or grab a drink. Tell your family, friends, neighbors, and yes, tell strangers about the show. It's time to have an in-depth conversation with our guest. Today, we have a professional runner that was born in Denver, Colorado, and currently resides in Boulder, Colorado. She qualified for the 2020 USA Marathon team. She is a two-time Olympic trials qualifier, the marketing manager of Viral Fitness Group. She is a seven-time first-team All-American and a Pac-12 champion in the 10K. Please welcome Jen Bergman. Jen, how are you?
Good. Thank you so much. That was an awesome intro.
Thank you. Thanks for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
So before I go back and we kind of kick off where your running started, I want to read off some things for all our running people out there. First off, when we get to the college thing, I'm going to put a link in the show notes just right off the bat because your accolades are crazy long. I mean, they're pages long of all the stuff that you've done. But your PRs in the half is 1:11:32 in the Houston 2020, the marathon 2:34, Chicago 19, and have a 5K of 15:52 and a 10K PR of 33:04. Though both of those in 2013. Those are remarkable numbers. That's why you have the accolades you have. But I want to back up. What is your first memory of running, and how old were you?
Oh, that's a good one. It was with my dad, definitely. We used to go hiking every weekend. I grew up in the Bay Area.
Okay.
So I didn't live in Denver for long. Most of my childhood is in San Jose, California. And we'd always go hiking. I remember I'm also with both my sisters who much waterfall about a mile away that we really wanted to go look at. I think I was like 11. It was right. It was sixth grade. So I must have been like 11 years old. But there was a waterfall me and my dad wanted to look at, and my sisters weren't too keen. So he's like, all right, you guys, I'm going to leave you in the lodge. And we'll be back. You know, Jen, if you want to go, we'll have to go quickly. And I was like, okay, well, we can just run. So we ran to the waterfall and back, it was 2 miles. And my dad was like, Jen, you're not bad for never running before. You made it a whole mile. Like, you should think about joining the cross country team in middle school. And I didn't even know what cross country was. I asked him, I was like, why would people run across the country? That doesn't make any sense, Dad. Explained to me that cross country is a sport where you run and you race. And that was kind of the start of it.
As all of us, and as a runner myself, it's the same thing. I don't know. I haven't met a runner yet that goes, I just love running when I started. I knew what it was. It's always, you fall into it through somebody else.
Yeah.
What kind of average mileage are you doing these days?
Well, after the trials, so the trials was February 29th, and I've been a little banged up since then. So I've actually been mostly cross training.
Okay.
Before that, my highest mileage week ever was just over 90.
Nice. And
legs are a little banged up, but now I guess it's a good time to be on the shelf a little bit.
Sure. So as you said, you grew up in the Bay Area in San Jose, and you attended Valley Christian High School. You were an 8-time MVP in the cross country and long distance and track. When you look back at your high school career, what's the first thought comes to mind?
It's actually funny because I just did a podcast with someone that was in my graduating class. We talked a little bit about high school, and it brought back some good memories. So the question was, what's the best memory from high school?
Yeah. When you think back at your high school career in general, I mean, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Is it, the camaraderie of the team? Is it your accolades? Is it your recruitment? What kind of pops up?
I think, I was always in high school. I was always ready for college. So I think it was when I realized that I could kind of pick what college I wanted to go do thanks to running. That was really fun. Me and my dad, we spent hours and hours every weekend looking into different colleges and trying to narrow it down on where I wanted to go. I mean, that was beginning of senior year. That was a fun time. Yeah, taking trips to look at different universities.
I'll bet. And obviously, outside of being an 8-time MVP, you were the best athlete in your class for the freshman and senior year. You were the 2008 Mercury News Athlete of the Year. Placed 6th place in the Foot Locker Regionals and 33rd in Nationals. But what I want to go through is you had some hurdles in high school, and you had some problems in both of your knees with Osgood Schlatter. How was that?
Oh, God.
Yeah.
I haven't heard that term in a long time.
How did you, first off, when did the pain start? And then how did you get past that?
Well, I'm a super late bloomer. I went to college when I was 17. So when I started high school, I was, just turning 13. And I wasn't, because I was running a crazy amount or anything. It was super frustrating because I believe it was my sophomore year. My knees just hurt, and it wasn't a injury from one race or one training run. They just started hurting. And my parents were awesome. They tried to take me to physical therapy and see if there was any type of treatment I could do or exercises. And one doctor I went to finally just spelled it out. He goes, you're growing an insane amount right now. You've grown, this many inches in the last year. Unfortunately, this is growing pains. So you're not going to really be able to run until you stop growing so much. So that kind of sucked. Hearing there's just nothing I can do. I just have to wait it out. So I joined the swim team that year, which helped a lot. And I still felt part of the team. Swimming's obviously a great workout. And then sometime that summer is when my knees just stopped hurting, and I never had that the Osgood again.
Did you at any time think about why you got into swimming, that maybe this is a new path and running may not work out?
No, that was never an option. I loved running. I love swimming, and I still do it in the pool. Well, obviously not during this time, but I've always gone to the pool at least once or twice a week. So I do love swimming. It's just it was never maybe I'll do swimming instead of running. I always wanted to stick to running.
Gotcha. You end up at the University of Arizona. You kind of hinted on having fun and traveling around and taking a look at college campuses. How crazy was your recruitment?
I made it stressful than it needed to be. Looking back, I wish I would have enjoyed the process a little more. I was so stressed out about making the right decision when there isn't really. I don't think there's one perfect school for anyone. I think there's a bunch of good options you can pick from. To me, it just felt like if I didn't pick the right school, I was picking the wrong school, and I couldn't narrow it down. It was never, I have a good. I didn't go on one trip and leave saying, this is my school. This is going to be my team for sure. I had so many mixed emotions about every trip. So they were really, really fun. And I just wish I would have enjoyed it more at the time than focusing so much on picking the perfect school.
What was the tipping point for you to choose Arizona then?
It was the coach, man. University of Arizona. I've never had any desire before that. I had never any desire to live in the desert. It was never one of my top schools, but the coach called me every single Tuesday at 6 p.m. I knew I was getting a phone call from the coach. You're only allowed to call once a week. And she called once a week on the button. And she would just tell me, this girl signed from this state, this girl signed from this state. And I was like, wow, it got down to like 9 or 10 other females had committed to the University of Arizona to do distance running. And the idea of like joining a school with a large freshman class and building that team together started to sound more exciting than, going to a school that was already winning everything. Because what can you really do as a freshman if you go to a school that's, winning Pac-12s every year and winning nationals every year? She really put that idea in my head that, that we haven't made nationals as a team in a decade. And now, 8 women have already signed that are pretty dang good. If you come on this team, we're going to have a strong freshman class. And that's just, your first year. Wait till like your junior, senior year. So she sold me. Yeah, and I signed with the University of Arizona in November.
How was your transition from high school to college? Was it pretty smooth, or did you get to college and go, okay, this is a completely different level?
So the very first weekend, I clearly remember, Tucson is little, it's not altitude, but it's like 2,000 something feet. It's always a little bit cooler than Phoenix. But I'll never forget my parents dropping me off for freshman weekend, and it was 106 degrees. And I remember crying, thinking I'd made a terrible decision. I knew I was like, this is why I was so stressed out all last year. I knew I was going to pick the wrong school, and I was crying. I'm like, I was thinking about transferring already that first weekend. Like, what the heck was I thinking? But as soon as my roommate got there, Liz, and as soon as I started to meet the team, it was a complete shift. Like from the very first week of practice, I got along so well with the rest of the team and my coaches and the entire coaching staff. I don't ever remember getting homesick once that freshman year. I do remember being super intimidated. We went to a big invitational and lined up next to 300 women, and I just got swallowed up that first race. So that was a little bit intimidating, but I settled in pretty nicely. I'd never put too much pressure on myself to perform as a freshman. I wish I would have, redshirted a year for sure. Starting out college at 17, I definitely wish I would have maybe redshirted that freshman year or somewhere in the middle when I was kind of having an off season. But besides that, the transition really wasn't. I mean, California is an intense state to compete in. Everyone, especially looking at the times they're running now in California, it's a fast state. So I think growing up in California got me pretty ready for D1 competition.
Absolutely. As a freshman, you were the number 2 runner and the first runner across the finish line in the NCAA championship for your school. That had to feel good after what you just talked about of crying when you're thinking, I got to get out of here right now, to now I'm the first one across the finish line for the school. So as you said, you adjusted pretty good, and somewhere in there, everything started to click for you. Did you feel it as the season was going in cross country, things were starting to go your way a little bit?
Yeah, it really wasn't until unfortunately I was the first one on the team to cross the finish line at nationals. There was a couple other girls that just didn't have a good day. So as a team, we were excited to be at nationals for the first time in, I think it was 8 or 9 years. But we did want to place a little higher. I think we were second to last. So it was cool to be at nationals, but we had higher hopes. So it was kind of bittersweet. I felt like I did pretty good as a freshman that year, but it's always more fun when your team does well together. And it's kind of the same, the rest of the freshman year. I wouldn't say I had outstanding performances. Especially, I did the first 10K I ever did. I remember getting lapped by the first 8. There was a group of 8 running in the front. I got lapped by them. And I told my coach, I was like, I'm never running 10K on the track again. This is ridiculous. Racing over 3 miles is ridiculous. That's what I told her. But that summer I spent, I know it's real funny looking back now, but that summer I spent my first summer in Austin, Texas, because my parents had moved there, and it was brutal. I had done dry heat, but the humidity was just another beast. Yeah. So I spent my whole summer there. I was running at 5:30 a.m. on the button every single morning. And I just came back in the dry heat in Tucson. It's similar to how you feel coming down from altitude. When I did my first few runs at practice, I was like, wow, I feel good. It's easy running here when it's not 95 degrees and humid.
Yeah.
And that sophomore year was the first really good season I had, where I was placing top 10 at Pac-12 championships, and track went really well. So that's when I started to go from just someone that was competing at D1 to being one of the top competitors in D1.
When did the strength training kick in? Did that happen right when you got to Arizona? They lay out a plan for you to go, we're going to start strength training and cross training, or were you already doing that in high school?
Well, because of my Ojin slaughters in high school, I aqua jogged and swam for a good chunk of that year. And then my coach in college was also a big fan of getting in the pool. So once a week we didn't run, and it was an option to get in the pool and cross train or just take the day off. And then I think twice a week we did weights in the evening in the weight room, mixed with a 20-minute run. That was our doubles back freshman year. It was just 20-minute shakeout run and go to weight training. So yeah, we're doing that about twice a week, and then cross training once a week.
Gotcha. Because usually that's one of the things that most athletes start to see is once they got a little bit stronger, a little bit more in shape than they were in high school, time started to come down, get a little bit more stronger, a little bit more faster, could kick, and everything starts to come into place. And moving forward into 2011 for the outdoor, you were the All-American in the 10K, NCAA Outdoor. In the 10,000, you finished 3rd. And from doing some research, sound like you had a pretty strong kick to come into the top 3rd. What do you remember about that?
I was always really, really patient. I never got anxiety or anything sitting in the back of the pack. I think I was in dead last place. But at nationals, it's more about strategy than speed. So I remember all of us, literally a pack of, I think 24 women qualified for nationals every year. Yeah, 24. So 24 of us just in a huge pack, and I was just hanging out in the back, and it was hot. So that summer in Austin, Texas paid off because it was in Des Moines, Iowa, and we raced it at nighttime, but humidity, you can't really escape it morning or night. It sits there. So I remember being really, really hot. And I knew it was going to be a slow start. So I just chilled out. And I think with a mile to go, someone finally made a move, and I went with them, and we hit a little pack of us kind of separated. And that was my first All-American ever. So I remember thinking oh my God, I'm in the top 10. If I can just hang on and pass 2 people, I'm going to be All-American. So I just remember thinking just hang on, beat 2 people. Cause top 8 was the goal. That's All-American. And then we got down to the final, lap and a half. And I just kept picking them off one by one all the way straight to the finish.
That had to feel
It's
good.
easy. It's fun. You give yourself energy when you pass people. It's fun. You give yourself energy when you pass people. It's definitely an easier way to work your way up. Getting past is mentally and physically exhausting.
It is. Absolutely. Yeah. I was out running this morning, and I'm not doing anything compared to what you guys do, but I saw somebody pass me and I'm like, wow, that was just kind of deflating all of a sudden. I wasn't expecting.
Even if you don't care, you're still like, oh, that didn't feel good.
No, it didn't. And then that year of 2011 in cross country, you were first or second pretty much in every race. Were you at the feeling in cross country then that you were the person to beat every time you told the line?
It was never like an overwhelming like pressure that I felt. I had a great, Elvin was a grade below me. And so me and her, we pretty much did every single workout together, stride for stride. So if we could hang on to each other for really hard workouts, we knew we were in shape, and we would do the same thing in races. We would just find each other and kind of just hang on to each other. And that was we would try and stay patient, and usually we kind of flipped off every race who was in front of who, but there was never we never had to be separated at workouts because we were racing or competing, or there was never hard feelings. Pretty solid duo all through college.
Nice. Moving on to 2013 USA, in the 10K track and field championship, you finished 8th, and in the Boston 5K and the BAA, you finished 1st. Look forward in your heights of going, maybe I want to start to get into longer mileage of the half marathon, or was the marathon ever even in your thoughts at that time?
It was never in my thoughts senior. I mean, I figured, eventually every distance runner is probably going to do a marathon at some point. As far as competing in one soon, it never had crossed my mind. But I got a really good opportunity to sign a contract with Mizuno, and the coach and the agent had a small team based out of Washington, D.C. So as soon as I finished my eligibility, which was the USA champs, or the track USA champs after my senior year, he called me right after. So I still had a year of school I was going to finish and stick around and help coach the team as an assistant coach. But he said, if you can finish up all your credits in one semester and come out to DC, let's do that. And he kind of just said, track racing's not as big outside of college for distance runners. Let's get you on the roads. Mizuno wants you to be running half marathons and marathons by the Olympic trials. So that's what we're doing.
How was that for you, from going from college and then transitioning to being a professional runner?
It was a lot harder than my transition from high school to college, for sure. It was. And I think my regret is just doing too many changes at once. I moved across the country. I had never lived East Coast before, especially, in a city like DC. It was a really, really small team, and a couple of the girls were a lot older than me. So I didn't have that. I went from having, 10 people my age, I'm with them 24/7 with my roommates, my teammates, to kind of living alone and not knowing I didn't have any family. So I think I just made too many changes at once. So the adjustment wasn't very smooth, and it never really felt like I settled into DC. So after about a year and a half, I ended up leaving and heading to Portland, Oregon.
Okay. While you were in DC, when you did your half marathon debut in Philadelphia for the rock and roll?
Yep. Yeah, that was because at that point it was like, you need to get a qualifier for the marathon trials, and you can qualify in a half. So that was kind of the goal going to Philadelphia. It was a hot day, and my marks were way off. Training wasn't going that well for me at that point. I was already thinking that I needed to probably make some changes. So yeah, that was the first half though.
Do you remember what the goal was supposed to be? Were you supposed to be around 115, or were you guys trying to get a little bit lower than where you're at 114?
Well, no. So the Philadelphia one, the goal was, because back then it was 75 was the half marathon standard. So the goal was to break 75 minutes.
Gotcha. Okay. During college, and I didn't hear this, and maybe it happened, did you have any setbacks or injuries when you were in college at all, or were you pretty injury free?
I was very, very lucky. I think also my coaches had me at lower mileage, so I never was pushing too hard, and we always took 2 weeks completely off after every season. So I had shin splints. I know I got some foot tendonitis, but I went straight through college, not redshirting for one season. So pretty lucky.
Yeah. So you decide to leave DC and head out west. At that point in time, where was your thought process of, okay, I'm leaving DC, I'm going west? Where was your mindset at going, I need to find a new sponsor, I'm going to do this? Or were you looking at maybe a different career path?
A lot of my moves, I've moved around a few times since college, and they're always kind of, I guess random's a good word. I don't know if there's a whole ton of logic put into it. I had a few friends in Portland. Elvin said she was going to move out there, and I had been talking back and forth with Skechers. So they were looking to sponsor some people. So I was like, I think I can get a small sponsorship. And I had started getting up my personal training certification in DC. So I figured I'd find a job in Portland, and I just kind of packed up my car and made my way out there.
And speaking of jobs, and almost every professional runner has a list of them, because you're always, as you said, either on the move or trying to find a way to supplement income. Before you got your certification of being a personal trainer, what else were you doing to try and make ends meet for yourself?
Is this in DC or in Portland, Oregon?
In DC.
So in DC, they paid me nothing. I didn't actually have to work. I just started getting my personal training certification because I needed something else to do. And then you got to Portland and you needed that. Yeah, I needed that. And I just, in college, we had 6 a.m. practice every single day. And then I'd take classes all day, and then we'd meet for a second practice. And then my roommates would make dinner, and then we'd go to bed and do it all over again. So I was used to being busy all day long, every day. On the weekends, we'd hang out. We always were planning fun stuff to do, socializing. So when I got to DC, I was like, I have nothing after, we'd meet at like 6 o'clock also, because it was pretty hot there, and I'd be home by 9. Like it was daunting to have the entire day with nothing to do. I started to get that's when I had decided I wanted to do some personal training or some coaching. Nice. And somewhere in there, you end up joining the High Performance West Training Group. Your college coach was associated with that. Is that right? No, actually, well, yes and no. So, because my college, I joined that group to have people to train with. Okay. My college coach continued to prescribe my workouts though, because at that point we were less than a year from the trials, the marathon trials. And I was qualified to run it. So I was like, I'm just going to go for it. Why not? And, I didn't want to, I had gone back to training with my college coach. She was at a different university by then, but I wanted to just stick to, I made it 4 years on her training plan without getting injured once. I had a few injuries in DC, and I got one right when I got to Portland. So when I was healthy again, I decided I would love to have people to train with, but I'm going to stick to what works for me, at least through the trials. 2015 seemed to be kind of a little breakout for you. You win the rock and roll half in Las Vegas here where I'm at 1:15:22. How did that feel? And I run that thing a few times, and I would love to be around 1:15. Man, I've run Chicago, and I did the trials, and those were windy days, but nothing compared to what it was in Vegas that day. It was the craziest winds I've ever run in. It was really, really fun though. I remember I flew in the night before, because I had just gotten a new job at a studio I really loved. And I literally decided, the week of the half marathon to do it. And, cause the race director got back to me and said that someone had canceled last minute. And so if you want to come out, we can give you a hotel room for free. And so I was like, all right, the tickets are cheap. But I flew like Spirit Airlines. I landed at midnight. It worked out because the race was in the evening. Yeah. Done it. So, it's a PM race, which is rare for a half or any road race. Yeah. So I slept in and ran the race. And I don't know if it was because the weather was so bad or what played in my favor, but it just worked out well. Again, I just kind of stayed patient in the beginning. I mean, definitely slowed down. Going down that strip, it's just completely straight. So the wind was straight head on. But it was fun. Yeah, it was really fun. It was fun to win one. Was that the first one you won? Yeah. Nice. And then from there, play second in the club cross country national championship. Then you go to Phoenix in the rock and roll, and you get fourth there. And then the Olympic trials, it was your first marathon debut. Talk to me about day leading up. Nerves, excited. Where were you with everything? I was super excited. I knew going in, I wasn't trying to go for top 3 or anything, or even top 10. We started to hear about the weather, and we knew it was going to be a really hot day. So we threw time goals out the window and to, start out super relaxed. And it was a loop course, luckily, because, there were some complications. I think what happened was they ended up ordering sponges that had soap. So the ice sponges that we were supposed to have weren't going to be there. They had to rip up shirts. And I just remember thinking going on the 3 mile or every 3 miles you could get an ice sponge. So I just remember running for the sponges. It was brutal. It was like 90 degrees. And it was in LA downtown. So it felt humid and muggy. It wasn't, I think I went into it kind of scared. So I expected it to be worse than it was.
Okay.
If that makes sense. I had it hyped up in my head to be like, especially with the heat, that it was going to start to feel a lot worse a lot earlier in the race. So I think that kind of went in my favor. I mean, it was brutal though. I remember at some points I just almost started walking. I was like, I can't do this. This is so hot. I'm not going to make it. And you're seeing these professional runners you look up to drop off left and right. They're walking, they're stumbling off the course. So yeah, it was a crazy day. That was a crazy first marathon. Yeah.
I'll bet one you won't forget, especially with that kind of weather, but you got through. And at 2:49, which is a solid, really good time. And then 2016 comes around and you have a foot injury that puts you out for a while. What was the injury to the foot and how long were you out?
I can't say for sure because I didn't get an X-ray on it or an MRI. But I'm pretty sure I got a stress fracture on the top of my foot, one of my metatarsals. Because it just wouldn't go away. And I think that was, I decided a little burnt out at that point. I had some good races. I won Vegas. The trials didn't go terribly, but I didn't feel like I was reaching my potential at all, not compared to what I ran in college. So I decided to just take some time off racing. I told my agent I needed a little break. And I think I'm fast forwarding a little bit, but in 2018, me and my partner Josh, we went to South America for 4 months, and then moved to Boulder, Colorado.
Being you brought that up, I already have that down. Let's talk about that trip because you went away for 4 months and traveled to Ecuador and Chile and a couple other places. What was that experience like for you?
It was awesome. Me and my partner were in Portland for about 3 years, and it's a beautiful place. We loved it, but the weather really takes a toll on you in the winter. It's not the rain or anything that gets to me. It was the dark days. It's just cloudy a lot of the time there. And we're both sunshine people, and we weren't loving our jobs too much. So I came home from a run one day and was like, hey, what do you think about, quitting our jobs and going to South America or travel? We hadn't picked South America yet, but I was like, we both want to travel. And I really would like to train at altitude before the trials in 2020 and give it a real shot. So what do you think about going? Yeah. So we ended up picking South America because my best friend was going to get married in the Dominican Republic in December. So we figured we'd make our way through South America, go to Dominican, and head back to the States.
After that was in 2018. In 2019, you have your PR at the Chicago Marathon of 2:34:37, which was an 8-minute knockoff from your previous PR. What was the reason? 8 minutes is huge in running. Did you anticipate that? Were you feeling really good, or were you surprised by that time?
No, I actually was shooting for a faster time.
Wow.
So I joined Roots Running when I moved to Boulder, being coached by Richard Hansen. We're a smaller group. There's 4 girls and 5 guys, but all 4 of us, the girls are really fast. So I had great training partners, really for the first time since college. And, living at the altitude, I switched jobs. So I was working in an office, 30 hours a week, which I'm not made for an office, but I didn't realize how, working in a gym 30 to 40 hours a week was taking a toll on me physically. So being able to focus on my fitness and not other people's fitness made a huge difference. And so, I ran a couple of races, I forget I think the Philly half again, the Philly half, and then the 4:2:10K. But that I knew I was in really good shape. So I was actually going for a little faster of a time. I wasn't upset with 2:34, but me and my coach knew that I was ready for it.
What were you shooting for it that day?
2:29.
Wow. Nice. That's flying. How did you get hooked up with Roots Running Group and Dr. Hansen? Did somebody kind of lead you there, or did you know Dr. Hansen beforehand?
Nope. I'll give my agent Neil. I've been with him since 2016, and he kept telling me, you should really reach out to Richard Hansen. They have a great little team in Boulder. But towards the end of our South America trip, I got another, always the feet with me these days. I got another foot injury. So I wasn't in shape at all. I wasn't even running when I moved to Boulder yet. And so I was like a little intimidated. I didn't want to, join this. I knew their accolades. Aaliyah had finished 10th at the trials in 2016. So I was a little intimidated. I didn't want to join a group where I could barely run and, look like I didn't know what the heck I was doing. So I waited a couple months. And then once I started running again, I reached out to him. And everything just started clicking from there.
For those that don't know what Roots Running Group is, it's an elite distance running group in Boulder, Colorado. And I suggest you look it up, and we'll actually put a link to it in the show notes as well, so you guys that are out there interested can take a look. Jen, you're also part of NES Consulting sponsorship. How did that come about for you?
Neil called me after the trials in 2016. He goes, I noticed you didn't have an agent. He actually went to the University of Arizona as well. I didn't know him during my time there, but he graduated, I think, a year before I did. And I didn't have an agent at the time. And so I signed with him, and he's turned into like a big family friend since then. Every race he's at, he goes out to eat with my family. Me and Josh have stayed at his house in Houston. It's been great. Yeah. He's helped me out of so many situations.
2020 Olympic trials, finished 17th with an A standard time. Sounds like you were geared up for that. Obviously looking beyond that before this whole COVID has hit. But before that hit, what was the outlook for you going forward before the trials and then after the trials? What were the new outlooks for you?
As far as goals?
Your goals. What was your goals going into trials, and then after trials, what did that change before COVID hit? What were you looking at?
So going into the trials, so the plan for, A goal for the trials was going to be top 10 finish.
Okay.
B goal would be top 20. And me and my coach, we always make pretty hefty A goals. Like going into Chicago, sub 230 was the A goal. And, it's hefty. It's not, we don't make goals that are I'm for sure going to hit. We do goals that are a little bit out of reach, but not impossible.
Okay.
So top 10 was kind of the goal. And then the plan after that was going to be to do a quick turnaround and get ready for the 10K trials on the track. We talked about it for a while. I haven't been on the track since college. He's like, I think there's a little more left for you on the 10K. So let's, if you think your body can handle it, let's try and get you on the track. And so I ended up 17th at the trials, and we were both so happy about it. Even though it was the B goal, it was to be 17th at the trials on such a tough course like that. Even just showing up to the start line is a huge accomplishment for a marathon, because you put so much, you put your body through so much to get there. So when you can make it to the start line healthy, it's already a win.
If you would talk about that track for the 2020 trials, because I heard it was brutal, and it was supposed to be a replica of what was going to be for the Olympics. And then that ended up getting changed before you even get to the trials, but they didn't change the trial track. How difficult, and talk to my listeners about how tough that track was.
I'd have to double check on my Garmin, but it was, I believe it was over 1,100 feet elevation gain total. It was 3 loops, and at no point was it flat. You're either going up or you're going down, which is pretty rare for a marathon. And then the turns were very aggressive. It made it kind of fun, because I've never run a race where I can see who's behind me and who's in front of me, but because it closed off a street and you go downhill almost a mile straight down one way. You do a U-turn and you come back up it. So you could, going back up the hill, you could see who's behind you. Going down it, you could see who's in front of you. So it was pretty fun. I love hills, and I knew the turns were coming, so I was ready for it. I started out super patient, and I just had fun with it.
Keep you motivated to go, all right, I can see who's in front of me. I'm trying to, pick off the next person and not let the other person behind me catch me then.
Yeah, you could see it on their faces, especially that first lap. I think I was, in 50th place the first lap, and I could just see people's faces coming up that hill, and I knew I was going to be able to pick a good chunk of them off. Nice.
Finishing 17th is great. Congratulations on that. I'm going to kind of turn a little bit now into some other things that you do, and you're part of the Viral Fitness Group, which I understand is crazy, like 45-minute workout that everybody does. Talk to me about Viral Fitness Group and what your role is.
Well, I hope it's funny in like a year from now, because it's not funny right now, but we opened up Viral Fitness Group 8 days before we were forced to shut down because of coronavirus hitting the fan. So the name the name, it'll be funny one day, but yeah, we were only open for about a week. And I met up with them, or it's a small world. My, Josh's little brother worked with one of the founders, in Seattle. So we got linked up, and it's a family, which I really like. It's not a corporation. It's a brand new fitness concept. And I knew I didn't want to do, in Portland, I was on the microphone and training people all day, multiple classes every day. And so I'm not interested in doing that anymore. Maybe I'm more interested in training the people we hire to do the classes and do some of the marketing stuff. So they took me on as a lead coach and the marketing manager, and we got an awesome studio open. We hired some great coaches, and it will still be awesome when we open again. We just have to, it's on hold right now. But yeah, it's the biggest studio I've ever seen. It's a 45-minute workout. They got the speakers we have are like, the only time I've seen speakers this big are like in clubs or bars. So the sound is great. They're really about building community and stuff. We didn't get a chance to do any of that, but it'll be fun to get back to for sure.
Nice. And being a certified personal trainer, you obviously have a love or a passion to help others with their fitness goals. And you talked about getting that certification at one point in time when you were moving to Portland. Have you always had that passion to help others, or did it kind of develop as you got out of college?
No, I've always had it. I was always team captain for high school and for college. And I love kind of being a leader and helping people reach their goals. And especially because outside of college, running it's kind of a selfish sport. You're not really part of a team anymore. You're not, trying to you don't have 7 of you that need to run well to place well. It's individual. So I like to do something that's not just for myself. I like helping others to feel good about themselves and their fitness. And especially when people tell me, no, I've thought about running, and I'm like, ding, ding, let's talk.
Let's talk. Absolutely. Going back to you a little bit, you said you were kind of on the shelf, so to speak. What's your current injury right now, and what's your outlook now going forward with, coronavirus taking over everything?
I was trying to get back into running right after the trials, and it took about a down week or 2, and then started doing easy runs. And it wasn't from the trials, just the back of my knee had, or my coach thinks it's maybe the hamstring tendon that connects to the knee. He's a chiropractor, so he knows more than I do. But it was bugging me a little bit before the trials. I think how tough the course was, it kind of just really pissed it off. So if track season was here, I might have pushed through it a little bit more. But with everything being shut down, we just decided it's a good time to just completely shut it down. Anything that needs healing, let's get it healed up. And, it really couldn't be a more perfect time to just take a step back. And I love running. So it's been a bummer during quarantine, because even without races, I love to run. So I do miss it. And that's been a bummer, but I am, it's nice to not have that pressure. It sucks when you're on the sidelines and you're watching all these races happen and you can't be a part of it. So it is a good time to be on the sidelines a little bit.
Yeah. And then once you get back to being healthy, what's the plan going forward then for Jen?
I think I'm with the rest of the world right now is plans are kind of hard to make right now. I think, we're just playing it by ear. I'd love to say, I'm kind of thinking of doing New York Marathon or maybe Houston. Berlin was definitely the plan. If you asked me a few months ago, I'd say I've always wanted to do Berlin. So that plan, but you just never know. And I'm not holding on to even fall marathons happening for sure. I don't want to say they're not going to, but I don't want to say they're not going to happen, but I don't want to, completely expect everything to go as normal this fall. I think that there's a lot of things that are uncertain right now. Yeah,
I think there's a lot of uncertainty, especially with racing and how many people they're going to allow at a start line and all that kind of stuff, and what the new norm's going to be on the course with aid stations. And I'm kind of with you going, kind of just waiting to see. And everybody's doing a lot of virtual races right now, just try to, at least keep that competitive spirit up a little bit. But Jen, where can listeners find you at on your social media?
Instagram and Facebook. Instagram is Jen Berge 16 and Twitter is Jen Berge. I can't promise that I'm too active on Twitter, but I try and keep up with Instagram.
Follow her on Instagram. We'll put that link out there for you. Are you on Facebook, as you mentioned, or not much?
Yep. Jennifer Bergman.
Okay. We'll link that one as well. Last thing before I let you go is, and I always like to end with this with my guest, what kind of tips can you give to somebody out there that's starting to get into running and, has that passion and really wants to embrace the sport?
I think if you're thinking about it and you're on the fence, I think it kind of just, it speaks for itself once you get started. It's one of those things where at first it might be tough, but within a couple of weeks, you start to feel, your legs get less sore, you're breathing less hard, you're hungrier during the day, you're sleeping better. I think it just, you feel, it's a great time, especially now. It's a great time to just go meditate, to clear your head. So I would say just if you're thinking about it, just do it for a few weeks and the rest will speak for itself.
I would agree with that. Jen, thanks so much for being on the show. I appreciate it. It's been fun.
Thank you, Tommy. It has been fun.
Everybody out there, if you want to ask a question on a future show, go to our Patreon page, which is patreon.com/beforethelights. And you can find out how you can ask a question and get your name shouted out on the show. For show notes and links to all the stuff that we talked about with Jen, it'll be on the show notes. You can check it out there. Please follow us on Instagram at Before the Lights Pod. Thank you for listening to Before the Lights. I'm Tommy Canale. We will talk to you next time. Until then, everybody, be safe, stay healthy, and keep smiling, everyone.